Hey, who's up for some common knowledge? The show where I take a look at common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you, are they any good in the Pauper format? Let's start off with Urban Utopia. One and a green for an enchantment aura that enchants a land. When this aura enters, you draw a card. An enchanted land has tap to add 1 mana of any color. That seems okay, but we already have this card. It's not is it abundant growth? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Yes. Abundant growth. It does the exact same thing, but it costs 1 less. Abundant growth sees play in the Bogles decks, but it can also see some play in some other places as well. Mostly just the Bogles decks though, because you want a little bit of fixing. You usually play a lot more green than you play white, so having a way of getting white in there is pretty good. It's an enchantment that replaces itself. Those decks do not have a whole lot of draw, so this thing ends up being pretty good for those. And it gets your enchantment count up for your things like your ethereal armor and your ancestral mask, which that's nice. When you have to pay 2 mana for that effect, that's not as good. It's not as good. When you get your 2 mana, you want to be starting to use Utopia Sprawls and things like that that are really upping your mana count instead of just fixing your mana at that point. So while the art is good and I like the name and I think the effect is generally pretty good, the cost is what takes this completely out of contention, honestly. Do you need 5 of these kinds of effects? You're already played for abundant growth. If you need that card, do you really need a 5th copy of this? I don't think you do. Let's give this a 2. I'll give it even a little bit better than that. I'll give it a 2.3. It's still a good card in a vacuum, but when we know that there is a strictly better card than this, it's really tough to validate it coming into that deck. Captured by Lagax. I love a good Lagac. Is 1 and Selesnya, which is a green and a white, for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and when this aura enters, you support 2, which means putting a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. We get a pacifism that also adds a couple of counters. Interesting. This certainly doesn't go in the Bogles decks. It could, but it wouldn't. You almost certainly wouldn't play this. So I don't know what deck you really would put it in. I think the answer is none. I think the answer is just none of them. I don't think this is a particularly good card. I don't really care about the support too, so at that point, I'm paying an extra green mana for what? Because I could just play pacifism, and you don't really play pacifism in a Pauper either. This is not great. Not a great card. I'd still, I'd rather play my Journey to Nowhere and just get the creature off the table entirely. Yeah, it's. I don't know what to say. Bad card. Let's go with again, great name, great art. Got Lagac in it. Love good Lagac. But this is not a good Lagac. This is a bad Lagac, and we'll give it a 1.7. Pretty bad. Bramble Elemental. I remember this card from Ravnica City of Guilds. I remember liking it, but I don't remember what it does, so let's see if I was stupid or not. It's 3 and double green for a 4/4 elemental, and whenever an aura becomes attached to this creature, you create 2 1/1 green sapperling creature tokens. Okay, it was fine. It was all right. As far as Pauper goes, man, we're seeing a lot of stuff that potentially could go in a Bogle's deck, but doesn't. This creature itself is not a Bogle. It does not have hexproof. It doesn't have any sort of way of stopping opponents from targeting it. And so that's not great. Costs a lot of mana to get on the board in the first place. But once it is on the board, you stuff this thing with auras. One of the other things that the Bogles decks has a real struggle with is creatures. You need more creatures on the board in case your opponent has sacrifice effects. because you really, really don't want to sacrifice your Bogle that has a billion auras on it. So you need other guys, other sacrifice fodder out there. This guy will make you plenty of sacrifice fodder, but the just the point in the game when you're able to get this on the board, and then having to play even more auras on this guy to get those other creatures, and now this guy is still vulnerable to your opponent's removal. Like you kind of see where this is, potentially good in theory, but in practice it really, really doesn't work. Probably a fun casual thing. Again, I played this pretty casually in middle school and high school. In high school, Ravnica I think was high school for me. Maybe it was part of middle school. Anyway, you can see where this could make for a fun little casual kitchen table deck, but outside of that, I don't think it really goes anywhere. Let's give it a 2.1. Yeah. Numbing Dose is 3 and double blue for an enchantment aura that enchants an artifact or a creature. Enchanted permanent doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. At the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted permanent's controller, easy for me to say, that player loses 1 life. This is blue? Why is this blue? This is like a, let me show you a card that I really like. Pillory of the Sleepless from Guild Pact, which I like this art way better. This is a pacifism that has this kind of same thing. So they can't attack or block, similar to not being able to untap. I guess worse, but similar. This got 3 mana. This costs 5 mana. Why does this cost 5 mana? I mean, I guess it can enchant an artifact too, so you could potentially, I don't know, you put it on some artifact, now your opponent's not able to, I'm trying to even think of the artifact that you'd put it on. What's an artifact that taps in Pauper that matters? Like a prophetic prism, I guess. But that's like the worst thing you could put this on in the Urzatron Monstertron deck. I guess you could. Like a Lembas. Now they can never crack their Lembas. No, this is bad. It's 5 mana. Why is this so much mana? This is a ridiculous amount of mana for what is not a very good card at all. I'm going to give this a 1.3. Really bad. Really bad. Martyr for the Cause is 1 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. When this creature dies, you proliferate. I like proliferating. I don't particularly want to proliferate when I have a grizzly, like this, again, grizzly bear. It's a 2 mana 2/2. And I suppose if you have sacrifice effects, you can choose when to proliferate at any time. But if your opponent is the one who gets to choose when you proliferate, whether because they attack knowing that you could block this guy, or they block this guy when you attack, or they use some type of removal spell on this, they're getting to choose when proliferating is good for them, or when it's the least harmful for them. You know, you get to a situation where you only got 1 creature with a counter on it, and okay, this guy proliferates to 1 guy. Maybe you're playing the depletion lands, and they can wait until you've used up 1 or 2 of your depletion lands, and they go, okay, well, you can proliferate that last one, I suppose. But, it's the card itself doesn't really put a clock on the opponent to want to kill it. And without some way of sacrificing itself, you kind of need a whole lot of things to line up in the right way to really get the good value off of this. Yeah, this is pretty bad too. I'm going to give this a 1.6, I think. We've gotten some really rank cards lately. Phalid Omnivore is 3 and a black for a 3/3 fungus. can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature. This creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If a sapling was sacrificed this way, you gain 2 life. Well, it is a sacrifice outlet. Not a particularly great one. We have cheaper sacrifice outlets that are both cheaper to cast the card in the first place and cheaper to sacrifice. This still is not the worst amount to have a sacrifice for, just a single mana. You can do it instant speed, so swing in with this guy and potentially turn your 3/3 into a 5/5 or a 7/7 or even a 9/9 really quick. That's cool. You can use it in like an ATOG style way where you swing in and your opponent has to decide, well, do I block this thing knowing that they could pump it up a bunch, or do I not block it knowing that they could pump it up a bunch to kill whatever creature I used to block with? So you really force them into some tough choices, but you're already spending 4 mana to put a 3/3 on the table. Then it has to live a whole round and before you can start paying the mana to sacrifice other things. How many saplings are out there where you're really gaining the life off of this thing? Is that part of the card really matter at all? Probably not so much. I guess it works if you have changelings and things like that. That could be kind of cool. But for the most part, I think this is just too expensive. I just want a Carrion Feeder instead. I look at this card and think Carrion Feeder's in Pauper. Just play Carrion Feeder. And so I would. I'll give this thing a 2.4 though. It does make itself pretty big. If you have a bunch of saplings, this does gain you a bunch of life while also making it big. Yeah. Daru Healer is 2 and a white for a 1/2 human cleric. You can tap to prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. And it's morphs for just a white mana. Which means you can play it as a 2/2 for 3 generic mana, and you turn it face up anytime for its morph cost. It's pretty bad. Because it's just, how much does a Samite Healer is only a single mana? Or is it 2? 2 mana for a Samite Healer, which is basically the same thing. It's a 1/1 instead of a 1/2. Thing costs 3 mana normally, or it costs 3 mana and then a 4th mana to flip it. No. just no. This is, I love the art. I love these Onslaught clerics with the kind of wicker look to them. But man, these cards are not very good. I'm going to give this a 1.4. Really don't like this. Arctic Merfolk is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 Merfolk with Kicker. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand. That's kind of cool. You may return a creature you control to its owner's hand in addition to any other cost as you cast this spell. If this creature was kicked, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. Huh. I mean, how big of a difference? And there is. I'll tell you, there is a difference. But how big of a difference is there between this card and one of my favorite Pauper cards of all time, Dreamstalker? Dreamstalker's 2 mana. It's a 1/5, and when it enters, you return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this thing, when it comes in, you have the option. You don't have to do this, so you could just play it as a 1/1. That's pretty bad, though. Don't really do that. But you return a creature. It's not a permanent. Which matters a lot. But this is kind of like a Core Skyfisher. This is kind of like a Glinthawk. This is kind of like a Dreamstalker. But because it doesn't have an enters trigger, and it's a kicker cost instead, it's an additional cost, which actually might also be better in some ways. Like, don't discount it, because we see this with all sorts of Eldrazi spells in Pauper, right? The Writhing Chrysalis that has a cast trigger. This is a cast trigger because it's an additional cost to cast the spell. Even if your opponent counters this creature, you've already spent the cost by bouncing another creature back to your hand. So with a Core Skyfisher, that's an Ender's trigger. So if somebody counters your Core Skyfisher, you don't get the bounce. So you'll always get the bounce with this. And if it does resolve, now you got a 2/2. So it's a grizzly bear that bounces a creature. And if you got a cool ETB effect, you know, if you got a refurbished familiar or something, now you play your refurbished familiar again. I don't hate this guy. You know, if you're trying to go a blinky bounce deck that doesn't use white, and I do have one of those, and it plays Dreamstalkers, and it plays Ghostly Flickers, and it tries to do some flickery bouncy stuff. This is kind of an interesting idea. I don't think it's necessarily as good enough to go in those decks, but it deserves at least a little bit of consideration. I'm not really opposed to it. I'm going to give this thing a 3.3, which seems kind of wild, but I think it's true. Darting Merfolk. Okay, let's maybe slow down on the Merfolk, but let's see what this one does. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1 Merfolk. You can pay a blue to return this creature to its owner's hand. That's not as good. you probably want to bounce something that is better than this back to your hand. So I still like that last card more. Although, here's a really terrible idea, but you're playing some kind of Impact Tremors deck. So you pay 1 and a blue, you put this on the board. You pay another blue, you bounce it back to your hand. You pay another 1 and a blue and put this on the board. You pay another blue and you bring this back to your hand. That is getting you your Impact Tremors triggers. Whew. But it's not... Oof. That's a lot of mana to put in for something like that. Okay, better use of this. This is essentially a blocker all the time. If your opponent doesn't have trample, you play this guy. Your opponent swings in with a big creature, 8/8, 9/9, 13/13, whatever. You block. You pay the 1 at instant speed. You bounce it back to your hand. You've already blocked. All the damage is blocked. Now you bring it back to your hand. Next turn, you pay your 2 mana. You do it all over again. That's pretty good. It's like a form of regenerate almost. I don't know. You could probably make something like this work, but 1 creature with trample and you're done. 1 big creature with flying, and this doesn't do anything to it. It has holes. It has holes for sure, and those holes are pretty massive. Let's go with I'm going to give it a 2.5 for the potential. It's not a good card, but it does have potential. It was in a World Champ deck. You got to give it something for that. I really would like to see the rest of that World Champ deck and know like what else was in that. Do we have a way of seeing that? Yeah, I guess we do. Is this? Yeah, this is all of Alex's deck. 2 Daring Merfolk, 4 Lord of Atlantis, 4 Looters, Pearl Tridents. Ooh, Pearl Tridents. Those are just 1/1s. But you know, this is an honest to God Merfolk deck, and a Tim and some Tims in there. This deck, I don't know. Plays Gush. Gush is a cool card. Counter spells. Okay, we've looked at this enough. That's funny, but you know, it's not like they're doing anything. Not like Alex was doing something that was really using this guy outside of just probably the thing I said about blocking and bouncing. I don't know. Kind of interesting. Did we already give this a score? Yeah, it was like a 2.5, right? Let's keep going to Moment of Defiance. It's 2 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 and gains lifelink until end of turn, and you draw a card. So it's an Unholy Strength and lifelink and a card draw. But you only get it the once. I don't know. Not an awful combat trick. Not an awful combat trick. This can gain you some life, whether you're attacking or blocking. Replaces itself with the card draw, instant speed, so you get the combat trickiness of it. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. 3 mana is a lot for a combat trick. Even one that draws a card so it replaces itself, that's still a lot for a combat trick. I don't really want to keep 3 mana open for that. And also, because it only gives the 1 point of toughness boost, most of the time you're probably going to use this to trade with the opponent's big creature rather than block the opponent's big creature and have them lose the creature and you keep yours. Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. Let's give this a 2.4. Yeah. One bonus card and we'll be out of here. It is Stone Hands. 2 and a red for an enchantment or enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +0/+2. And it has pay a red, and enchanted creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So it's a 3 mana +2 toughness, but it also gives the creature fire breathing. Huh. That's kind of bad. that's really kind of bad. 3 mana for just 2 toughness is really bad. And while yes, it does have fire breathing here, being able to pump up the power, that's more mana you got to pay into it. So you're probably not doing it the turn that comes into play, because you probably don't have that much mana. So you made your creature a little beefier, a little tougher. And then the next turn, let's say all of this was red, you can give your creature a +3 boost, maybe even a +4. I don't know. You're putting a lot of mana in one basket, and if they just cast down the creature or something, you wasted a lot of mana on that thing. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. I don't remember ever seeing Stone Hands though as a name or a card. I know I did. I've looked through every card in Ice Age, but I just don't remember this one. Very funny though. Not good. Not good, but funny. Let's give this a 1.3. Yeah, 1.3. That sounds fair. We'll see you next time on Common Knowledge. Bye.